Hello everyone, it's Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do a VR to Don Michelle, and I believe she called the video All Up in My Feelings decks, and it's about decks that she uses when faced with a certain type of emotions and feelings, obviously. I believe it was a really honest, very transparent, and also very encouraging, I have to say, video that I watched a couple of weeks ago, I believe 2-3 weeks ago. I'm sorry, I cannot remember, but I'll make sure to put the link to her video in the description box below. And it came out of a discussion that started, I believe, a couple of months ago. I'm a weaver, so I'm a part of a membership program, and you know, there were a few topics discussed in a few lives that we had, and you know, and we were talking about sometimes being overwhelmed by emotions, which is 100% human. And we also talked about some of us that use decks, as in tarot and oracle decks, to kind of have an outlet for these emotions, because it's not always easy to express emotions and feelings. And I have to say that we live in a society in which, in many cases, we're actually not supposed to, you know, be honest with what we feel, with how we feel, and we're not supposed to express these feelings in particular. I remember, it was a few years ago, but this is something that's been going on for a while. I remember being in a 9-to-5 office job, a really good job, well paid and everything. I have nothing to complain about, but I remember being told more than once that I was being emotional and that I had to keep it under control. And it was referring to nothing really outrageous, but, you know, perhaps being under stress and saying, okay, I need to take a moment here because I'm really stressed out. And I've been, you know, reprimanded because of that. And I remember being tagged for it. So you really have a label on your back that says this is an emotional person, handle with care, you know, something like that. And I remember back then I was very affected by that, because it was something that it was related to my having OCD, for example. And sometimes if you're familiar with the OCD, refers back to obsessive compulsive behavior or disorder. I have to say though that nowadays there's a lot of warning, let's say, before talking straight about the OCD as a disorder. I'm not one of those people that goes around switching on and off their light switch, you know, 30 times, even though I have my most profound respect for someone who goes through that, because I can only imagine how painful your life must be to always be conditioned by things around you. But what I want to share with you is that there's emotions and feelings that come to us in certain situations, whether you have, you know, perhaps a mental health problem or issue, or you suffer from a mental health condition or not. Okay, we are human beings, and guess what? Human beings have emotions and feelings. It's okay to say that we're humans. It's okay to say that we're going through something. It's okay to say that we need a moment. And when we're actually doing that, if we are faced with a conflict because the other person is mocking us in any way, or not accepting it, or making us feel even worse, it's actually not fair. It's not okay to do so. So I wanted to jump in on this tag and you know, and talk about feelings, because we all have them and it's absolutely fine. So it's going to be, on the one hand, it's going to be a personal video. On the other hand, it's going to be a fun video, and we're going to look at a whole bunch of decks. So let's start. The first one I want to talk about is rage, because rage is something that still carries a stigma in nowadays society. It is perfectly fine to feel enraged. There's always a reason, And so if we try and repress it, guess what? We're just gonna make it worse. My rage deck is the Star Power Tarot. I just absolutely love it. And I tell you what, if I had the other decks by Zigzag Girl, I would probably show you all of the other decks, because those decks have that kind of energy for me. And I really love the way in which they actually allow me to feel okay when I feel rage. To feel okay, not okay, because if you're feeling rage, obviously you're not okay. But what I mean is to be okay with the feeling, that kind of feeling. And it's also one of those decks that, because it's, let's say, busy, let's put it this way, it's a busy deck. It also, you know, it forces me to slow down. And by forcing me to slow down, ironically, I have the counter effect of feeling better. And apart from the fact that there are a few cards in here that are quite confronting, that are very strong and powerful, and I really like the way in which they express certain meanings of the cards. I really do believe that it's one of those decks that gives you the opportunity, also because of the explosion of colors, because you can find a way, let's say, an outlet thanks to colors, thanks to an artistic expression, for example, of lines put together in a certain way, or even the busyness of the cards themselves can actually express rage. In my case, for me, it can be a really good outlet for these kind of feelings of rage that come most of the time, at least for me, because I feel powerless, because there's a situation, there is something going on and I can't do anything about it, and I feel like I'm being overwhelmed. So this is, together with, I just wanted to show you quickly, because I got it at the end of last year, the Wisdom of the Divine Feminine. I also want the Wisdom of the Shadow, which is by the same authors, and I don't have it yet, but I'm looking for it, let's say. But the Wisdom of the Divine Feminine is one of those decks that really makes it okay to feel rage, because it's grounding. It does have a perfectly fine and perfectly balanced expression of feelings. But it's also because, for example, this card is one of the cards I'm talking about, so the Fierceness card. So if you don't even look at the title, what you see is the expression of rage in my case. So for me, if I had to put it down into a scene, into a drawing, that's what it would look like. Me literally just probably yelling, you know, spitting fire, if we can see it this way. In my case, it will be also with a bit of smoke coming out of my ears, because that's what happens to me when I feel rage. It's very hot. It's very powerful. Even physiologically speaking, my reactions on a nervous system, with, you know, my skin becomes red because I'm that kind of phenotype. My eyes become really big, and that's the kind of reaction that happens to me when I feel rage. This deck is a lot more balanced. I feel like for what I could see from the videos, for example, walkthroughs that I've looked at, the Wisdom of the Shadow, I think it's called, is a lot more about rage, apart from the fact that there is an actual rage card, I think, I seem to remember. But I just wanted to quickly show you this one as well, because it is pretty much a deck that I use to express rage as well. Let's move on to the second feeling. And the second feeling, and I'm just jumping here and there, I'm not necessarily following any kind of script here. So we're looking at the discomfort, because I talked about OCD earlier, and the discomfort deck is the Lost Forest Tarot, which is probably a bit of an odd choice, but let me talk about discomfort. So when you have OCD, discomfort is that feeling that things are not as you expect them to be, and that creates a situation of alarm. There's all sorts of red flags, you know, being raised, all sorts of alarm bells being rang, and you fear for anything. Well, the range is vast. You can go from losing something or someone to losing yourself. And I can assure you 100%, of course, it comes in various degrees, fair enough. So the other day at the airport, you know, the fact that I had to change my way of packing was uncomfortable, but I could deal with it, I could manage it. It wasn't overwhelming, but it can go to being extremely overwhelming. And when it gets to that point, and I'm very lucky because I only got to that point a couple of times, 3-4 times in my life. Well, but when it gets to that point, and anything in between, you know, the really mild to the very, very strong, I need to relate to something, let's say, calm, grounding, balanced. So the opposite of chaotic, the opposite of out of sorts. Let's say the Lost Forest really helps me with that, because I don't know if you know this deck. So it's a fantastic deck by Chelsea Santa Maria, and what I absolutely adore, and I'm just going to show you with the suit of the oceans, which is a suit of cups, let's say a suit of water, as you can imagine. So we got it here. Let me see if there's any other card. No. So it's a really gorgeous deck. So this deck was, I have the second printing, but there was a third printing a couple of probably more than a couple of months ago, but there was a Kickstarter, and yeah, and there was a second printing. So let's see if I cannot fit all of the cards. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna choose a few ones just to let you see what I'm talking about. Let's do this. Let's see if they fit. Yeah, they do. So this deck is absolutely gorgeous and amazing and unique, because I've only ever seen another couple of decks that have the same concept. So when you look at the minors, all of the suit actually combine in this kind of tableau. So it's a landscape wide, let's say, portrait or a picture. And on the one hand, when you read tarot, this is not helping because it doesn't have any of the RWS symbology. And in many cases, the cards themselves, you can sort of attach a meaning, an RWS related meaning to the cards, but it's not, you don't start from the card and understand the meaning. You do it the opposite way. So you need to know your RWS in order to read this deck, which makes it probably not the best beginner's tarot. Even though, you know me, I do not put labels on anything. So if you love this deck and it helps you read and you're a beginner, go for it. Who am I to say otherwise? And it is a gorgeous deck, absolutely fantastic. So as you can tell, for example, we go from the 3 of Oceans to the 7 of Oceans, and you do have this tableau, and it's absolutely fantastic. Now, seeing this, because the cards really match one to the next, and it looks like there's no overlapping, there's no discontinued things. It is very calming. It has a very calming effect on myself, and therefore it is one of those decks that I use, probably the deck that I use whenever I feel discomfort coming from OCD, triggered that sense of the really unpleasant sense of things being off, things being wrong, you know, and therefore feeling fragile, feeling vulnerable, feeling in danger. So whenever I feel that, something balanced, something that is really almost predictable, let's put it this way, has a really calming effect. And this is a fantastic deck. So if you don't have it, have a look. I don't know if it's still available though, because as I said, it was a Kickstarter, but I think that's already shipped out and people have it. And if you don't have it, I don't know if it's available. If it is, I promise I'll put the link in the description box below, as per usual, as for all of the other decks that I'm going to show you today. Now let's talk about another feeling, and this one is a really positive one. It's a really, let's say, nice one, and it's the feeling of yearning. So I call it yearning because it's the feeling of wanting something and attaching a bit of nostalgia, perhaps also to wanting that thing. and this is the deck for it, for me. So it's the Tarot Landscape by Francesca Matteoni and illustrated by Yoshimari. This has been released by Vivida. It is a deck that I've seen, so I've had this deck because it was a gift by a really wonderful person that obviously knows me very well. And that was back in November, I believe, or even October. And I have loved this deck ever since. It is absolutely fantastic, and I am so very pleased that I've seen it in a couple of channels. I've seen it in Annette's channel, Annette from A Project Refined Life, and she also really likes it. And I think Marine from The Waves of Your Soul also got it recently. And I'm so very happy whenever I love a deck so much. I'm so very happy to see that other YouTubers or, you know, people on Instagram or on Facebook or on TikTok get to know this deck, because it's like being part of the community. You know, you have something more to talk about. Not that we lack things to talk about, but it's always very nice to have a passion in common when the passion takes on a very specific object, you know, the shape of a very specific object, like this one, in this case, this tarot deck. So this deck represents yearning, so, you know, longing for something, desiring something for me, because I'm a traveler, always been, always will be, you know, as long as I can, obviously. And I just love all of the memories on the one hand that I have whenever I look at these cards, and all of the yearning for places that I haven't been to yet. So on the one hand, there is a really positive feeling about being reconnecting with something that I already seen in my life, and also the really positive feeling of yearning for something that I have not seen yet. So this is a gorgeous deck. I have to say it's a nature-based or animal-based deck. The illustrations are very kind, very calm, very balanced, very soothing, I have to say. And the same goes for the choice of the colors. You know, even when we look at cards like the Ten of Swords, which is traditionally a card which is very intense, and it can be very triggering as well. And it does still remind you of the meaning of the Ten of Swords, but it does it in a very gentle way, in a very subtle way. I don't specifically think this is a hug deck, but I do believe that it's a kind deck. So there is a slight difference. A hug deck will tell you that everything is going to be fine no matter what, and that's kind of a lie. But you sometimes need that too. So, you know, I do have those kind of decks as well. And I absolutely love this card, the Judgment card with the Northern Lights, because every time I see this card I'm reminded of Iceland, of Arctic Norway, Finnmark, and all the places I've been to where I've seen the Northern Lights, and on top of everything we see the Kitsune, so the spirit of the fox, even though in this case it might be called in a different way because it's a different place. But I really, really love this card. And I love that it's the Judgment card. So there's also really interesting details. For example, the Emperor's got a small spider in here. So it really relates to that kind of organization skills and putting things in order, etc. So when I feel like yearning for something that is beyond my reach, but I know that I want to apply myself to try and reach it or reach for it, then it's the Tarot Landscape that I turn to. And the next feeling I want to talk about is the feeling of shame, because there's no shame in feeling shame. You don't have to love yourself all the time. It's okay to be, you know, upset with the way we look, because I've been away for a month and now it's really, really difficult to adjust to the schedule here and to the weather and the temperature, which is completely different. I went from -3 degrees to +42, which is really taxing on the body. And I look, well, I don't want to say like, you know, the bad word, but I look terrible, okay? We had to go to an appointment this morning with my husband, and no matter how long I stayed in front of a mirror, and at a certain point I said, you know what, this is me, whatever. We're going with it today because I can't be bothered. And It's not a matter of being proud of who you are all the time, because that's actually kind of forcing yourself into something that is just not working sometimes. You have to accept that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to like ourselves sometimes. You know, it's okay to feel shame. It is okay. Because we live in a world in which, oh no, you should never feel ashamed. You should never. I'm sorry, but I should not do anything that I don't feel like doing. If you feel ashamed or something, it's okay. Work on it, of course. Try and understand why, but don't repress it, because that's not gonna work. That's the opposite of working. Anyway, I think you know where this is going, because I talked about these decks a few times in my channel, particularly about the Modern Seer Tarot, because it's not that common. I don't really see it on YouTube or other platforms, unfortunately, because it's a fantastic deck. But the Reclaim Oracle is very popular, very famous, and everyone talks about it. And it's also because it does even have a card which is called Shame. And I love that, because by having a card called Shame in an Oracle deck that has become really popular and very much spread, so used by many, it's kind of normalizing feeling shameful, which is what I want. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything about it. That doesn't mean that, you know, it just means that it's okay to feel like that. Please don't read anything between the lines, because there's nothing between the lines. I'm just saying it's okay to feel shame sometimes. It's fine. We're not always perfect, are we? As a matter of fact, I don't believe that I am ever. I've never been, you know, I'm always, oh, but maybe I should lose 1 more pound, or maybe my hair should be 1 inch longer, or I don't know, my skin should be a bit more smooth. I'm never entirely happy with the way I look, so it's okay to feel shame. Now, the Modern Seer, let me just open it, because the cards actually fall out all the time. I think that there was a little bit of a miscalculation when taking the measures for the box. So this deck is very unique, because as you can see, it's a very minimalistic style. You still have a clear view of what the card is. I used this deck so many times, but I also used it to read with clients, and I've never been asked by a client, hang on a second, what is that card? You can always tell what card you're looking at by the drawings. You don't necessarily have to read the titles, but if you want to, they are there for you, so it's fine. But it's a very minimalistic deck. It's got literally just this color. It's like a skin color, I guess, you know, beige color. And then you got the black line, and the black line is giving out the contour of the images on the cards, but it's so expressive. It is unbelievably full of life, and that's why I love this deck so much. It's one of those decks that I believe it's a bit underrated, probably because people feel like, oh, why do I have to pay $80 for a deck that only has, you know, it feels almost like it was easily done, like quickly done, but I can assure you it's not, because there is so much coming out of these cards. Each and every one of these figures, of these characters, actually do express. Look at this Nine of Swords. Isn't it absolutely magnificent? And in order to get that, let me tell you, well, in my case, it would be impossible. I would never be able to do something like this. But I believe that it's not easy either. You know, even for an artist, I don't think that it's actually easy to get to the level of expression of these lines with just a line. So, you know, kudos to the creator, who, by the way, is Christine McGraw. Unfortunately, this deck is not only out of print, but there is a website, and the creator has, I'd say, they registered the website, so unfortunately there's no information about this deck whatsoever. You might be able to find it still in some Facebook groups, I guess, you know, or maybe eBay, or you know, Etsy or something like that, depending on what you feel most comfortable with. The reason why I wanted to show you the reclaim is because these two go really, really well together as well. And also it reads really well with the Vessel Oracle. As a matter of fact, at the beginning when I got this deck, this tarot deck, all I ever used it with was the Vessel Oracle. But then, you know, I thought maybe this one could pair up really well as well, and indeed it does. And it's also because you're probably very familiar with the Reclaim Oracle, and it does have a lot of really strong cards, some of them slightly confronting, I might say, but always very balanced, because it's got very positive cards as well, like the belonging cards, for example. But you do also have something like regret, which is not an easy feeling to deal with, is it? So I absolutely love these two together. It looks almost as if, you know, the Reclaim Oracle was the opposite when it comes to the colors used, because it's got black background, which is the line color here is black, and it's got pinkish or beige pinkish kind of drawings, which is exactly the opposite of the tarot deck. You see, you've got grief. Look at this progression. Isn't it amazing? When these things happen, you have someone literally folded over to someone who's starting slightly to, you know, just probably lift themselves up, and to a person that is still not completely standing, but it's getting that. You see, you have this kind of progression, and it's absolutely fantastic. And in this case, when something like this happens, I don't even think that it's necessary to actually read the cards, if you know what I mean. Not that I wouldn't, as I still pay attention to them, but I feel like there is a message here, and if regardless of these messages given by the titles, it's a message of you can do this, you can slowly, you can feel the pain, okay, you can feel the pain, you can feel the grief, but it's something that it will take you, if you go through it, it will take you to a slightly higher position. And but please mind, this person is still not fully standing, so there's also the acknowledgement that we might never get back to be fully standing when we are pushed down so much. How unbelievably good these two are together. It's just, you know, it's mind-blowing. I really, really enjoy these two, and I honestly think that you know, when I feel that sense of shame, it's okay to feel it. When I use these decks together whilst I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, it helps. It helps me. It helps me. And of course it's subjective, of course it's personal, and perhaps what works for me doesn't work for everyone. Perhaps I'm the only person this works for, but it does work for me. And if it does, I will never stop doing it, because that would be silly now, would it? Okay, so these are the decks that I use whenever I feel shame. And the next feeling I want to talk about is very similar to yearning, but I call it nostalgia. So I might be wrong, but in my definition, in my experience, and in my way of relating myself to these two words, yearning, you still feel like you can reach something. You just really have this strong desire to reach something. It's out of your reach for now, but you feel positive about it. This is my take on that. I could be completely wrong. English is not my native language, but I do see it in that way. Let me know if you think that there's a different word that relates to that. So it's that feeling that you really have this strong desire for something, and you feel positive because you want to at least try to achieve it. Whereas nostalgia is something that is in the past, and it feels like it's a closed chapter. So nostalgia, it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes you feel sad, but it is very likely that it makes you feel sad, because you don't feel like you can still recreate those circumstances that made you happy. You know you've been happy in the past by doing a certain thing. You acknowledge that that thing may not come back in your life again. So it's different from yearning. Yearning makes you go for it. Nostalgia kind of freezes you. It freezes you. And it's the feeling of the Six of Cups for me, because the Six of Cups is very dangerous. You can actually get stuck in the Six of Cups by thinking, 10 years ago I was in a better situation. 10 years ago my mom was still alive. She wasn't, but 10 years ago I knew that person, and this person was in my life and I was happy. That's nostalgia to me, and it can be comforting at times. I'm not saying that it's not, but you can run the risk of actually getting stuck in nostalgia. And life is about movement, unfortunately. So the deck that expresses that for me is the Healing Waves Tarot, which is kind of counterintuitive, because the Healing Waves is all about actually healing. And the reason why this is expressing nostalgia for me is because I got this deck when I was indeed, I lived by the ocean, and the ocean was part of my healing, on my daily practice of healing. It was not sustainable for many reasons. We had to move away, and I know that it is highly unlikely for us to go back to live by the sea for many reasons. And therefore this deck represents nostalgia for me, because in a way it reminds me of the time in which I used to live by the ocean and how much I used to love it. And it's nostalgic because I feel like I probably will never be able to go back there again. Of course I can go back for a day, you know what I mean, but actually living by the sea is a completely different experience, other than, spending a holiday by the sea or going there in a day and coming back. It's not the same thing. Even the smells are different, the air at night is different. There's so many things. The flora and the fauna are different. There's a number of things. And so it was let's say an easier time of my life, in which I don't know, I feel like I had less worries, and therefore, I do associate it with that. And because I kind of feel like it's going to be impossible for us to move back to the ocean, it almost coincides with feeling that it's going to be really tough for me to feel as carefree as I was when I was there. I know it's a different kind of association of words, but it is what it is. And it's not the yearning, because I'm an adult and I understand, certain things cannot be repeated. But it is nostalgia. It's definitely nostalgia, the Healing Waves Tarot. So the next feeling I want to talk about is coziness. And by coziness, I mean the time in which you feel you can finally relax. Not necessarily because there's no worries, there's no issues at hand, but because perhaps you have reached a milestone, you've finished working, something like that, and you know that tomorrow everything is going to start again and the problems are still going to be there, but you can get cozy because for the day at least, there's nothing else you can possibly do. And so the tarot deck that I associate to that is the Tarot Pop Culture. It's a French deck by Bérengère de Moncy, published by Hachette. It is a recent deck that came into my collection when I went to Paris a few weeks ago. And I found it, because a few of you have been asking for it. So I found it in the FNAC. No, sorry. I found it in an independent bookstore. They didn't have it at the FNAC, which is a bookstore in France, chain of bookstores in France, like your Barnes and Nobles, for example. However, I looked for it in Amazon France, and they do sell it there. However, I have to say it is the luck of a draw, in the sense that I looked 2 days ago and it was out of stock. I looked this morning and it was back in stock. I don't know what's happening. So it is all of these cards. There's 78 cards and they're all references to pop culture, and I'm pleased to say, it's got a bit of everything, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love it. It's coziness for me in a deck, because come on, there's John Wick. I mean, any deck with John Wick, you know what I mean? Any deck with Keanu, really. Just give me a Keanu Reeves deck, please. Can someone, anyone of the creators listening, watching, please make a deck with Keanu Reeves. Keanu. Anyway, so it's not just Keanu, or it's not just John Wick. There's actually references to The Matrix, there are references to Constantine, there's Buffy, for example, there's the Kingsman. You know, it's so cozy. Here's Constantine. It's so cozy. There's Zelda. It's so cozy that it actually, it makes you feel really at ease. It makes you relax. You can look at the cards. There's the crow as well. You don't even have to, you know, work too much to tell the references. In some cases you might not know, but this is Daenerys Targaryen, so obviously Game of Thrones. This is John Press, and this is Jonas Kackenwald. This one I had to look up, for example, but there's Akira. There's the Lord of the Rings, etc, etc. The DeLorean, I mean, come on, there's the DeLorean. Funny thing, by the way, I was in Ireland a couple of weeks ago, and I was on a tour, and the guy said that the factory for the DeLorean was actually in Ireland. I had no idea. And there weren't that many cars produced. And I had to close it down. There was a whole story behind it. I'm not going to tell the whole story, obviously, the Sailor Moon. There's, you know, Why Not Willie from the Goonies. I mean, that's not coziness. I don't know what is to me. And because I'm from that generation, we actually watched the Goonies to, you know, to feel cozy. It's one of those things that you do with the proton pack. So I really love this deck. It's not just amazing because of the references, Sarah Connor, but it's also because it really brings you all of the really good feelings about all of these fantastic either movies or TV shows. You know, there's Paul Atreides, but this is clearly Timothée Chalamet, so it's not from the older kind of Dunes, but it's from the recent one. By the way, I think there's Dune 2 coming out, at least in Australia. I don't know when, but very soon, I think. And so it's fantastic. I have to say, the minors are peepish, but they're excellent peeps. So there's lazy peeps, and they're really well thought peeps, and these are the excellent ones. For example, this is Edward Scissorhands, and it's just fantastic, and it's the Six of Swords. And you get it, because it is that kind of transformation you have to go through. You don't necessarily want to, but you have to go through. So I love it. The Adam's Family, the Moonrise Kingdom, Morticia, you know, it's just, I love this deck so much. The Alexiometer from the Philip Pullman's, His Dark Materials, which is one of my favorite books ever. Hercule Poirot, of course, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to show all of the cards. Jumanji, I mean, any deck with Jumanji, come on. I think Hermione Granger, there's Harry Potter, of course. I think this deck is coziness in a deck. Absolutely gorgeous. So the Tarot Pop Culture. And we've come to the last two. And I really wanted to talk about this next feeling. And it's the feeling of fear. I tend to have, so I'm not going to get too scientific because I know that is boring. But bear with me 1 second. Fear is in the amygdala. You feel fear in your amygdala, and it's what a wonderful thing it is that every single human being on this planet has the same, let's say, center of fear in the same spot of the brain. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The amygdala, no matter who we are, where we live, where we come from, what we do, anything, is, you know, we feel fear in the amygdala. Fear is a very powerful feeling, one of the most powerful ones. When it comes to powerful feelings, we talk about feelings that actually help the species to stay alive. There's no two ways around that. Please understand, human beings are coded to replicate themselves. Life finds a way, and it's more important than anything else. So what happens is that the strongest feelings will be related to reproduction. We fall in love because we need to keep the species alive. I'm sorry to bust the romantic bubble, And I don't mean to say that there's nothing romantic in love. Absolutely, I'm probably a very romantic person. But what I mean with that is that I make room for both science and romance. So I understand that when we fall in love, it's because our organism produces a certain set of hormones, and these are determined, at least the impact that they have is for us to feel like we want to preserve the species, preserve life. But I also understand that we want to have romance because it's something that, it acts on different other things, for example. Fear, going back to fear, which is felt in the amygdala, is also to preserve life, because the reason why we feel fear is because our body perceives danger and we don't want to die. Life doesn't want to cease. And so it makes us feel fear because we react to fear. Fear on a physiological level is even more powerful than love, because on the moment you feel fear, the reactions are so overwhelming. Well, depending on the level of fear, obviously. If you're scared of a cockroach, is not the same as being scared of a deadly snake. Okay, that obviously is two different things. However, it is starting from the same little thing that is the amygdala. That's a really tiny thing in your brain. And it will have so much power on your body that there's absolutely nothing, I kid you not, nothing you can do to counter fear. Now, of course, there's chemical, let's say, help you can take in many cases. There's beta blockers, for example, they slow down the heartbeat. There's a few things that you can do, but why would you? Fear has a reason to be, okay? If you're, obviously there's irrational fears. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the let's say fear in a person that doesn't have mental health conditions or doesn't suffer from phobias. So those ones are slightly different. They're still felt in the amygdala, they're originating in the amygdala, but as I said before, I don't want to go on and on about science because I know that it's boring. We're here for the decks, so these are the decks that, in a very counterintuitive way, are actually those decks that actually help me when I feel fear. The principle, these are scary decks, okay? There's no two ways around that. These are scary decks. Fear is something, in my case, that I feel the most when I don't know what's happening. Because of OCD probably, but also because of other things. So when I don't know what's happening, I actually feel fear. I cannot control what's happening. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's coming next. That makes me freak out. And I try, but there's nothing I can do about it. So imagine yourself watching a horror movie, and I know that there's a lot of people that love horror movies. There's a lot of people that abhor horror movies. You don't watch it. A friend of mine literally was so shocked by the orca. I don't remember the original title, but it was a movie about an orca. So this, I think it's called Killer Whale. That kills people, okay, as usual, as you have it, like sharks and stuff like that. There's also killer whales, who, by the way, are not aggressive towards humans. But anyway, so when she watched it, I think she was probably 14 or 15. She was so traumatized. She never, from that moment on, she never went in the sea. She never entered the ocean, never entered the sea. And it's kind of limiting because this friend of mine lives in Italy, which is, you guessed it, surrounded by water, surrounded by sea. So that means that it's very limiting for her. But she, after that, not once. And the truth be told, I've been to the beach several times with her. She goes to the beach. She has no problem with that, obviously, because you do not find killer whales on the beach. But she never sets foot for, let's say, more than the knee. So she gets in the water up to the knee level, and that's it. And even so, you will see that she's actually kind of constantly alert, like she's not necessarily relaxed. And I get it, I completely get it. But in my case, it's actually the opposite. When I watch a horror movie, if I stop watching it halfway through, I will be forever, and I mean forever, you know, in pain, because I don't know what's happening. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how the movie wraps up. I don't know how they find a solution, whatever that movie is. You will notice that in horror movies or even in thrillers, there's always the same kind of arc, character arc. You know, at the beginning, the hero refuses the challenge, then they find themselves in a very difficult situation, so they have to accept the challenge. They fail, they win once, but then it makes you think that they won finally, but no, the bad person is back, the monster is back, and they have to triumph over again, they have to sacrifice something of themselves, etc., etc. I'm a writer, so I've been studying these things practically all my life, and I know how it works. Because of that, it's impossible for me to stop halfway through a movie. I have to watch it till the end. Because if you stop halfway through, the fear that I feel is actually worse, because my imagination is a million times worse than whatever the author of the movie thought about. Let me tell you, seriously, when you think about going far, I can go really far, you know, in scary stuff. And so I have to watch a scary movie till the end, because then I feel better, because it's complete. It's also related to obviously needing things to be complete, but it's really counterintuitive, but it actually helps me a lot. Even The Exorcist. Now, there is a debate about The Exorcist, and I know it's a bit of a sensitive topic, so I'm trying to make it as let's say non-confronting as possible. But there was an initial ending to The Exorcist, and I'm talking about the original Exorcist, not the remakes. There was an original ending that was not accepted, so the director actually changed the ending written by the writer. And whatever you've seen, unless you watch the sorry, not the director, the producer. Let me start again. So the director had a specific ending. The producer said, no, we're not going to air it like that. They cut it before. And it's a very negative. The original, the very first ones they released were very negative, in the sense that it was the complete total failure of, you know, good versus evil, evil triumphs. However, in the director's cut, it's actually different. There is a lot more doubt. It's much more complex, and I think that's one of the reasons why probably the producers thought that it was a marketing thing, that they thought that it wouldn't sell, that people would not watch it if it was too difficult to understand that kind of ending, which I kind of get, I understand. But on the other hand, it almost felt to me like it wasn't complete, and after I watched the director's cut, it feels a lot better. And it's the same process that I apply to everything that is scary, and whenever I feel fear, I need to confront it. So I talked about once, when my dad was still alive, I was in his house. We were at lunch, it was summer, all of the windows and the balconies open, everything open. Our doorbell wasn't working from outside, we didn't know. There was a guy that was coming in to paint, and the guy must have stood outside ringing the bell for like half an hour. The boy got really fed up, but he really needed to finish the job. We had no idea what was going on. In the meantime, we were having lunch. And so he just literally climbed on top of the balcony, and he came in through the kitchen. But from the living room where we were, I could see the proper shadow of a person in the kitchen. And because the guy did not announce that he was coming in, because he thought that we weren't in, mind you, I don't know whether it was something that he could have done or not. But anyway, that's what he's done. I saw the shadow, and my amygdala, which decides when you're scared, decides whether to freeze or fight or flee or fawn. My amygdala decided that, you know, the smaller size that I am, I should confront the invader. So my amygdala decided that I should have been fighting. So this is something that, you know, I find confronting for myself, but I do relate to that over and over again. Whenever I see something scary, I cannot look away. I need to see what's going on. That's my way of processing it. I know that it's not for everyone, and it doesn't mean that I'm a brave person, because I'm not. Seriously, it's just the way my nervous system reacts, that's all. Anyway, counterintuitive to look at scary decks whenever I feel fear, but so be it. And the last one, let's say, feeling I want to talk about in this really great tag is happiness, because of course we have to talk about happiness as well, which is a wonderful feeling. When I'm happy, I do fortunately have a lot of decks that not just I look at when I'm happy, but actually make me happy when I look at them, which, so it's a, let's say it's a win-win situation, because if I look at this, especially this deck, so this is the Desert Illuminations Tarot. This is the first edition by Lindsay D. Williams. For what I understand, the second edition has been picked up mass market. So if you don't have it, don't fret, because you'll be able to pick it up mass market. I hope that they keep the linen cardstock, because it's absolutely phenomenal. This deck is so happy for me. We got aliens, and we got aliens abducting cows for the judgment card, and then we got jugs of probably tequila, you know, and people smiling and dressed in cowboy clothes. And then we got more aliens and the desert and cacti, which I love. I love the desert. You know, even the Four of Pentacles, it's an alien just keeping everything close to their chest. I love this deck so much. It is, to me, with George O'Keeffe, for example, because it's based in New Mexico. My husband and I, Zorro, of course, my husband and I have been to New Mexico. We absolutely fell in love. We just found it such an amazing place. We've been to several cities in New Mexico, and we just loved it. We've been to Roswell during the Alien Festival, and so obviously something like that makes me happy. It makes me smile, and I absolutely love it. And you know, I really think that it's really well done. It's obviously whimsical, but it's also a kind of a deck that is also well thought. It's not just whimsical because it makes you laugh, but it actually gives you, you know, a time to actually reflect and seek for the meaning of the card, and you know, it's really well done. It's not just beautiful and exceptionally funny, but it's actually really well done. So I am so very grateful for this deck, and for the fact that I use it whenever I'm happy, because it really, you know, it gives me even more happiness when I look at the cards. I mean, look at the Six of Swords. Yes, of course, it is the kind of journey you have to embark upon. You don't necessarily want to, you know, you have to, and you do it anyway. But how beautiful is it? And this is a very typical photo you can have of yourself in Monument Valley, for example, which is not in New Mexico, but it's very close. I love it. It's wonderful. I love it. So that was the last one, and this was a very, I think it was a really good tag. So talking about feelings, being honest about what we feel and accepting it, it's something that we should really embrace in our lives. And when we can do that with tarot, it's even better. So thanks so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.